Elon Musk calls out Keir Starmer after Jeremy Clarkson's arrest. Elon Musk's bold confrontation with Keir Starmer following Jeremy Clarkson's arrest sparked a media frenzy, intensifying an already heated political debate. Musk, never one to shy away from controversy, voiced his discontent with Starmer's leadership, adding his voice to a growing chorus of critics. As tensions rise, what will the fallout mean for the future of British politics and its governance? Keir Starmer's leadership has come under intense scrutiny, especially after his policies alienated the working class, with the farming community voicing their dissatisfaction. Farmers, once seen as the backbone of Britain, felt betrayed when Starmer's inheritance tax reforms, originally promised to target only the wealthiest estates, were revealed to impact much smaller family farms. Protests ensued, as many felt that their long-standing needs were being ignored in favor of political optics. In the midst of this, Elon Musk, never one to shy away from controversy, waded into the fray. His tweets, which started with defending Jeremy Clarkson's arrest, soon broadened into a critique of Starmer's leadership. Musk saw Clarkson's arrest not merely as a personal issue, but as a symbol of the growing suppression of free speech under Starmer's government. For Musk, the broader discontent with Starmer's policies, especially regarding rising taxes and the neglect of traditional industries, was a direct reflection of the disconnect between the elite and the everyday Briton. Musk's involvement struck a chord with those disillusioned by the government's failure to live up to promises. By raising his voice against Starmer, Musk capitalized on the frustration of those who felt abandoned by their leaders. His commentary on the inheritance tax debacle amplified the sense of betrayal, as many saw the government's priorities shifting away from practical support to political maneuvering. In this way, the Clarkson-Musk saga turned into a larger conversation about the erosion of British identity, the stifling of individuality, and the widening gap between the government and the people it claims to represent. The spectacle of Jeremy Clarkson's arrest was a moment seemingly ripped from the script of a dystopian satire, equal parts absurdity and unsettling resonance. A man famous for his audacity, his ability to infuriate and entertain in equal measure, found himself at the center of an incident that escalated from the ordinary to the extraordinary in record time. The charge, breaching the peace. It was a term as vague as it was loaded, a phrase that masked a deeper and more insidious undercurrent of societal tension. Clarkson, the perennial provocateur, had stepped over a line. But which line? And who had drawn it? The events unfolded with an air of theatrical inevitability. Clarkson, surrounded by a gathering of curious onlookers, was confronted by law enforcement officers who approached the situation with an air of rehearsed authority. Their words were procedural, their demeanor detached, but the weight of their actions sent a ripple through the crowd. The Public Order Act was invoked, a piece of legislation ostensibly designed to maintain societal harmony, but increasingly wielded as a blunt instrument to suppress those who challenged the status quo. As the officers recited the standard cautionary phrases, Clarkson's expression, a mix of incredulity and defiance, seemed to embody the growing divide between individual expression and institutional control. To the onlookers, it wasn't just the arrest of a celebrity, it was the symbol of something larger. At that moment, Clarkson wasn't just a man who had allegedly breached the peace. He was a stand-in for anyone who dared to speak too loudly, to question too boldly, or to challenge too publicly. This was no ordinary arrest. The optics were meticulously scrutinized, the timing questioned, and the motives dissected. Critics were quick to point out the irony of Clarkson's detainment in a society that prided itself on free speech. Yet, as the details emerged, it became clear that this wasn't simply about Clarkson's words or actions, it was about the reaction they provoked. What had he done to deserve such a dramatic intervention? Was it a genuine disturbance, or was it the discomfort of his dissenting voice that had drawn the line? The media naturally pounced on the story, amplifying its implications and sparking heated debates across the political and social spectrum. To some, Clarkson was a provocateur who had finally gone too far. To others, he was a martyr for free expression, a man punished not for causing harm, but for refusing to conform. In pubs, offices, and online forums, the conversation shifted from Clarkson's behavior to the broader issue of the Public Order Act and its use in quelling dissent. And then came the backlash. The arrest ignited a firestorm of reactions, ranging from outrage to ridicule. Figures across the political and cultural landscape weighed in, each framing framing the event to suit their narrative. But it was Elon Musk's intervention that took the incident from a national controversy to a global conversation. Musk, never one to shy away from controversy himself, threw his support behind Clarkson in a manner that was both provocative and strategic. Musk's tweets were blunt, incendiary, and meticulously timed. He questioned the UK's political climate, aligning Clarkson's plight with broader critiques of leadership and governance under Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Musk's words didn't just defend Clarkson, they framed his arrest as emblematic of a deeper problem, a system increasingly hostile to those who refuse to toe the line. In Musk's hands, the incident became a rallying cry, a flashpoint in a growing narrative of dissatisfaction with authority. Meanwhile, the details of the arrest continued to provoke questions. What exactly constituted a breach of the peace in this instance? To the authorities, it was a necessary intervention to prevent disorder. To critics, it was an overreach, a sign of a government more interested in silencing dissent than addressing its causes. For Clarkson, the fallout was both predictable and surreal. Accustomed to controversy, he handled the aftermath with his trademark blend of humor and defiance. But even he seemed taken aback by the broader implications of the event. This wasn't just another headline about a celebrity behaving badly. It was a moment that exposed the fragility of the social contract, the tension between individuality and conformity, and the uneasy balance of power between the governed and those who govern. The arrest, however, didn't quell Clarkson's voice. It amplified it, nor did it deter Musk, who doubled down on his critiques of the UK's political landscape. The incident became a touchstone for debates about free speech, the role of government, and the limits of dissent in a society that claimed to value liberty. As the dust settled, one thing was clear. This was no ordinary breach of the peace. It was a moment that reflected a society at a crossroads, leaving a story that was as much about Jeremy Clarkson as it was about the world in which his arrest had occurred. In the end, it wasn't just about Clarkson's voice. It was about who got to decide which voices could be heard. When Elon Musk stepped into the unfolding drama of Jeremy Clarkson's alleged arrest, the situation morphed from a localized media frenzy into a global conversation about power, freedom, and governance. Musk's involvement wasn't just an endorsement of Clarkson, but an unequivocal challenge to the systems and ideologies he perceived as oppressive. His intervention, laced with sharp wit and unflinching criticism, turned what could have been a fleeting headline into a cultural and political moment of reckoning. The billionaire's words carried weight. It wasn't merely a show of solidarity. It was a statement of defiance, a digital mic drop against the forces Musk saw as stifling individual expression. To many, this was classic Musk, a man who thrives on challenging conventions, whether in technology, space exploration, or the very fabric of societal norms. But Musk's engagement didn't stop at a single tweet. His words carried the sharp edge of deliberate critique, aimed not just at the incident, but at the broader political climate of the UK under Keir Starmer's leadership. Clarkson's arrest, to Musk, symbolized more than a public disturbance. It was a microcosm of what he saw as a systemic failure. In his eyes, it wasn't just about one man being silenced. It was about the slow constriction of freedoms in a country celebrated for its storied history of democracy and open discourse. His tweets resonated with an audience disillusioned by what they perceived as an increasingly out-of-touch leadership. For Musk, Clarkson's plight wasn't merely a spectacle. It was a flashpoint in a larger narrative about the state of governance, the treatment of dissenting voices, and the erosion of individuality. The timing of Musk's involvement added a dramatic flair. As the UK grappled with political and economic challenges, Musk's critique of Starmer's government took on a populist tone. He wasn't simply defending a friend, he was aligning himself with a broader frustration felt by many within the working class. Musk, often cast as a global elite, positioned himself as a champion for those disaffected by the political establishment, a paradox that made his voice all the more compelling. His method of support wasn't limited to tweets. Musk's actions, as much as his words, painted a picture of unwavering camaraderie. In one symbolic gesture, he shared a pint of beer with Clarkson, turning a moment of leisure into a powerful image of solidarity. The drink wasn't just a social ritual. It was Musk's way of standing shoulder to shoulder with a man who had become a polarizing figure. This simple act carried layers of meaning, serving as a visual defiance against what Musk perceived as an unjust system. Yet Musk's involvement wasn't without controversy. Critics were quick to accuse him of oversimplifying a complex issue, or of using his immense platform to fan the flames of division. Some questioned whether his critiques of Starmer's leadership were genuinely rooted in concern, or were merely a convenient way to stay at the center of a polarizing conversation. Despite this, Musk's words and actions continued to spark debates. One of Musk's most compelling contributions to the conversation was his ability to elevate the incident movement into a global dialogue. His critiques extended beyond Starmer's government to broader questions about freedom and individuality. He pointed to Clarkson's arrest as emblematic of a wider trend, one where those who dared to challenge the status quo were increasingly marginalized. To Musk, this wasn't just a UK problem. It was a cautionary tale for democracies worldwide. Musk's polarizing presence in the discourse forced people to confront uncomfortable questions. Was Clarkson's arrest truly about maintaining public order, or was it indicative of a system growing intolerant of dissent? Was Musk's critique a genuine defense of liberty, or was it another example of his penchant for stirring controversy? These questions lingered, fueling debates that stretched far beyond the UK's borders. By aligning himself with Clarkson, Musk underscored a broader cultural divide, one that pits populist ideals against institutional authority. In his view, Clarkson's arrest wasn't just a singular event, it was a symptom of deeper systemic issues. For Musk, this was a fight worth engaging in, even if it meant wading into the murky waters of UK politics. Musk's involvement had irrevocably altered the narrative. What began as a local controversy had transformed into a global discourse about the role of power, the limits of free speech, and the resilience of individuality in an increasingly conformist world. Whether one agreed with Musk or not, his willingness to challenge authority and stand by Clarkson had cemented his role as both a provocateur and a champion of those who refused to be silenced. When Elon Musk and Jeremy Clarkson teamed up, it was a pairing that captured the public's imagination, defying expectations and sparking intense conversation. Their connection transcended social media exchanges, evolving into a symbolic stand against a political system many saw as increasingly distant from the people it served. Musk's involvement with Clarkson reached a new level when he publicly sampled Clarkson's beer brand, Hawkstone, an act that carried significant meaning. Musk's decision to taste and praise Hawkstone wasn't just about enjoying a drink. It was a deliberate show of solidarity with Clarkson, who had long positioned himself as a champion of the working class. By endorsing the beer, Musk aligned himself not just with Clarkson's brand, but with the values of authenticity, rebellion, and a rejection of the political elite. Clarkson, known for his sharp criticism and bold opinions, had cultivated an image that resonated with those who felt overlooked by the political elite, particularly the working class people who felt their voices had been ignored by the powerful machinery of the state. Clarkson's beer, Hawkstone, was more than just a product. It symbolized a rejection of the corporate-driven culture of modern Britain. By drinking it, Musk made a statement about standing with traditional industries and values that many felt were under siege. Musk, with his reputation for challenging norms through ventures like electric vehicles and space exploration, had always prided himself on defying the status quo. But by associating with Clarkson, a controversial figure, Musk took his defiance further. He wasn't just endorsing a beverage, he was opposing a political climate that many viewed as increasingly elitist and out of touch with the struggles of ordinary people. Musk's gesture went beyond a simple act of camaraderie. Drinking Hawkstone was a rebellion against political and cultural homogenization, a defiant act in the face of growing political correctness that seemed to stifle individual expression. Musk's words, calling the beer pretty good, carried more weight than a casual review of a drink. They became a defiant statement against a political system that appeared out of touch with the everyday lives of ordinary Britons. In essence, Musk's praise for the beer wasn't just an endorsement of a beverage, it was an act of resistance. It symbolized support for the working class values that both he and Clarkson stood for: authenticity, individuality, and independence. In a world where billionaires are often seen as disconnected from everyday struggles, Musk's decision to back Clarkson's beer was a striking message. He stood with the people who felt abandoned by the political elite. The tasting of Hawkstone beer, far from being just a moment of camaraderie, became a powerful symbol in the ongoing battle for freedom of expression and individuality. In a world increasingly governed by a controlling political system, Keir Starmer's leadership has faced growing scrutiny, with many feeling that his policies have increasingly sidelined the working class. Once seen as a figure who could unite the country, Starmer's government has been criticized for neglecting key sectors, particularly the farming community. Farmers, traditionally a vital part of Britain's economy, voiced strong dissatisfaction with Starmer's policies, feeling betrayed by his promises. One significant point of contention was the inheritance tax reform, where Starmer had assured farmers that only the wealthiest estates would be affected. However, when the details of the policy emerged, it became clear that the proposed changes were much broader and more damaging to smaller farms than initially indicated. This led to widespread protests, with farmers feeling abandoned by a government that seemed more concerned with political optics than supporting the backbone of British society. It was in this climate of frustration that Elon Musk, known for his provocative and outspoken views, entered the discussion. Musk, who has often challenged the status quo, took to Twitter not only to defend Jeremy Clarkson, whose arrest had sparked controversy, but also to criticize Starmer's handling of the situation. Musk's involvement wasn't just about the arrest, it was about a broader critique of the political climate in the UK. He saw Clarkson's arrest as a symbol of growing limitations on free speech and individualism, which he believed were increasingly being suppressed under Starmer's leadership. Musk's commentary resonated with many, particularly those who felt that Starmer's policies were out of touch with the realities of everyday Britons. He used his platform to highlight issues like rising taxes and the marginalization of traditional industries. For many, Musk's words spoke to a deeper frustration with a government that appeared more focused on appeasing the elite than addressing the struggles of ordinary people. His critique of the inheritance tax debacle further fueled this discontent, as many felt deceived by Starmer's promises to protect small businesses and family farms. Musk's intervention in the Clarkson saga thus became a larger conversation about the state of British politics. His support for Clarkson and his criticism of Starmer's leadership gave voice to a disillusioned working class, highlighting the disconnect between the government and the people it was meant to serve. The resonance of Musk's critique lies in its appeal to the working class. While he operates in the rarefied world of tech billionaires, his rhetoric often strikes a chord with those who feel alienated by elites. Musk's framing of the UK as a police state and his comparison to Stalinist regimes may have been hyperbolic, but it captured a widespread frustration with what many saw as an increasingly authoritarian tilt in British governance. This frustration wasn't confined to farmers or Clarkson's supporters. Pensioners, too, felt the sting of policies that seemed to prioritize fiscal austerity over social equity. Energy costs were rising, winter fuel allowances were being slashed, and the safety nets that once provided security for older generations were fraying under the strain of Starmer's economic policies. As Musk's tweets echoed across the public sphere, a wave of discontent surged, finding an outlet in the form of a petition that called for a new government. Within days, it amassed more than 2.5 million signatures, a striking display of collective frustration. This wasn't merely a petition, it became a powerful manifesto of dissatisfaction, a clear demand for accountability from a system many felt had veered too far from the needs of the people. The sheer volume of signatures spoke volumes, illustrating a deepening sense of alienation from the political class. However, the petition's impact was magnified by the response, or lack thereof, from Keir Starmer and his leadership. His dismissive attitude toward the petition only served to widen the rift. Instead of addressing the concerns of millions, Starmer's deflection reinforced the growing perception that political leaders, particularly those in the Labour Party under his stewardship, were increasingly out of touch with the realities of everyday citizens. His refusal to engage meaningfully with the petitioners didn't just come across as arrogance. It underscored a fundamental disconnect between the ruling class and the working class. This petition became more than just a call for change. It became a referendum on Starmer's ability to lead effectively. It was a stark reminder that, even in a democracy, the ultimate power lies with the people. The vast response symbolized a public thirst for a more responsive and accountable leadership, one that truly reflected the will of the people rather than the interests of a disconnected political elite. The Clarkson-Musk affair highlighted a broader cultural schism, a tale of two Britons. On one side were the working class communities, farmers, and everyday citizens who felt their voices were being drowned out by a government increasingly preoccupied with globalist agendas and urban elitism. On the other were the policymakers and technocrats who believed their vision of progress justified the sacrifices being demanded of the populace. Musk's involvement brought these tensions into sharp relief. By siding with Clarkson, he wasn't just supporting an individual, he was taking a stand for a vision of Britain that valued tradition, resilience, and free expression. For Musk, this wasn't about nostalgia, but about preserving the foundational principles that had made Britain a global beacon of democracy and innovation. As the dust begins to settle on this peculiar saga, one thing remains unmistakably clear. The issues it has brought to the forefront are far from resolved. Clarkson's arrest, Musk's provocative tweets, and the growing dissatisfaction with Keir Starmer's leadership have illuminated deep-seated frustrations that continue to fester beneath the surface of British politics. These tensions cannot simply be swept aside or dismissed as fleeting moments of controversy. For Keir Starmer, the challenge now is nothing short of existential. To regain the public's trust, he must bridge the chasm between the lofty promises of his rhetoric and the harsh realities of governance. The disconnect between the government's actions and the lived experiences of ordinary people, especially farmers, pensioners, and the working class, is glaring. Starmer cannot afford to rely on empty platitudes and vague assurances. To heal the widening rift, his leadership must translate into concrete actions and policies that genuinely address the concerns of those who feel increasingly marginalized by a political elite that seems to prioritize image over substance. If he fails to meet these expectations, he risks solidifying his image as an out-of-touch leader, unable to speak for the very people he seeks to represent. For Musk, this episode serves as a powerful reminder of the immense influence and responsibility that accompany his global platform. Musk has always embraced his role as a provocateur, using his position to challenge prevailing narratives. But in this case, his tweets and public gestures also underscored the double-edged nature of his influence. While his comments amplified discontent and rallied those who shared his views, they also risked deepening divisions, particularly in an already polarized political climate. Musk's words and actions have the potential to sway opinions, but they also carry the weight of magnifying fractures within society. The episode leaves him with a choice: to continue using his voice to challenge authority, or to recognize the complexity of his role in the broader discourse, where a single tweet can shape political conversations in unpredictable ways. In the end, the Clarkson-Musk saga transcends its headline-grabbing moments to encapsulate a much larger, more pressing issue.
So we're in the worst possible situation for someone like Clarkson.
The health of modern democracies. It highlights that governance is not solely about policies and laws, but about the intangible elements of trust, respect, and inclusivity that form the backbone of a united society. The friction between Clarkson, Musk, and the political system underscores the widening gap between the elite and the people. As the UK faces a pivotal moment in its political history, the question remains: can the nation preserve its core values while addressing the growing frustrations of its citizens? One thing is clear: voices, both loud and defiant, will not be muted, and figures like Musk and Clarkson will continue to challenge the status quo, pushing for a system that truly reflects the people it serves.